Hey, Pre-Sales Collective, it's your host, James Kakis, and today I'm going to be joined by Stephanie Kinzer, Executive Vice President, Enterprise Solutions at Salesforce. The topic of today's episode is the importance of executive sponsorship. Around the Pre-Sales Collective, we've created a Women in Solutions Excellence program, also called WISE, and a Diversity, Equity, Equality, and Inclusion program, also called DEEI. And these groups are providing resources to the global pre-sales profession and resources that are trying to support pre-sales professionals both internally and externally. Because if you're at a company and looking to start an employee resource group or an ERG, where do you start? It can be overwhelming. And so with the Pre-Sales Collective, we've created a WISE playbook to allow individuals to get started. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about the importance of executive sponsorship. What is an executive sponsor? What do they do? And how they can help evangelize your mission and your meaning within your company. And we're also going to dig into Stephanie's journey. Stephanie's had an amazing career in pre-sales and especially at Salesforce. And we'll talk about what she's done to empower her employees and her team. And so today's episode is more than just supporting an ERG or a WISE program, but how you can be helpful to those within your company and help them create a support system and an ecosystem to support both personal and professional growth. Today's episode is sponsored by Vidyard. With Vidyard, you can record and send custom video messages to your prospects and customers to stand out, clearly explain ideas, and connect on a more personal level. With Vidyard Pro, you can gain access to rich viewer analytics, customize your video playback experience, add your own call to actions after the video, and more. Sign up for Vidyard for free at www.vidyard.com. Once your account is active, select the upgrade option and use promo podcast PSC for a free 30-day trial of Vidyard Pro. Stephanie Kinzer, welcome to the Pre-Sales Podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure to have you on the podcast. We were briefly chatting about this. You've actually come up on a number of podcast episodes. Pat McQueen, Dominic DiNardo, as someone who was influential in their pre-sales career. You're also very involved with some of our Pre-Sales Collective WISE members. And so I think it's about time that we had you on here, and I'm very thankful to have you today.
I'm excited about it. I mean, those are amazing leaders. It's very humbling to hear that, but I'm excited to be a part of today's podcast.
Maybe before we get into that, Stephanie, we were talking offline a bit about personal and professional passions. Being involved in things like WISE programs at Salesforce have led you to be involved in other programs in your personal life. Is that correct? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So I think this is the evolution too of me as a leader in connecting some of the things I'm working on at Salesforce with the broader community. A couple of years ago, I had a chance to take a leadership position with the Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas. And I did that first by being on their technology advisory board and later becoming a board member. It's so important that we inspire the future generations of our workforce about our job family. And so I'm doing that through the Girl Scouts, and it is completely interconnected to WISE. They can see one to be one, right? Like not all technologists are in a dark room coding, although there's nothing wrong with that, but it just shows them a different dimension and hopefully inspires a few more.
I love that you say see one to be one. That is inspirational. And I love that you're going out there and doing that in your personal time. That's amazing to hear. Stephanie, let's talk about you for a little bit. Before we get into today's topic of the importance of executive sponsorship, let's learn a little bit about your pre-sales journey. You've spent a long time at Salesforce and have been in pre-sales for quite some time before that. So can you talk about that experience and that journey?
Definitely. I mean, pre-sales has been an amazing career and job family for me. I've been in pre-sales my entire career, minus the first 4 years out of school. Even that first 4 years, I did implementation work. So I was on the other side of pre-sales, kind of picking up the new customers and making the vision become a reality. And I was really drawn to the pre-sales role to help our customers envision something greater, something a little bit more tangible that was more connected to their value. And so, that was in the mid 90s. Fast forward to where we are today. I couldn't be more proud to still be in pre-sales and to be a leader of such an amazing team.
You've been part of Salesforce and massive growth over the past 18 years. It's probably hard to pinpoint one or two things that have really resonated with you throughout that experience. But is there anything that has made a really substantial impact on you as you've been part of this profession and part of an amazing company that has grown substantially since you first joined?
I think like the first thing that really strikes me about what happened with Salesforce was I had to look at it through a different lens. I had to take a step backwards to go forwards. I was a people leader at the company I was at prior to Salesforce, and I had to come over to Salesforce as an individual contributor. And so that took some wrestling in my own mind about, was that the right thing for me? Is this the right company? I mean, they only had 200 employees, and they were really we were an automated SFA tool in the cloud. But there was so much more to it. And I think that's the next big takeaway about Salesforce and the journey here is we're not just about the products that we sell. We're about a bigger vision, and we're about giving back and being something that's really transforming not only our industry, but our communities as well.
So well said. As a former employee myself, I definitely saw that come to light and felt those values as well. So I love to hear that you've talked about that. Stephanie, I'm excited to get into today's topic of the importance of executive sponsorship. And we're going to talk about your perspective in being an executive sponsor and supporting programs like Women in Solutions Excellence WISE at Salesforce. But let's maybe level set with the audience first. Can you talk about what an executive sponsor is?
I really love executive sponsorship. One of my own personal values is connectedness. And to me, the role of the executive sponsor is really about helping the team that you're sponsoring understand the interconnectedness of the work they're doing with some of the broader company goals. And that includes bringing your network forward, helping to get additional sponsorship and remove barriers that might be in the way of the team. There's a quote by an Irish poet who talks about, "No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent and a part of the main." And I think that's really important when you think about program groups, task forces, ERGs. It is about what they're solving, but it's also about something more broad for the whole entire company.
Stephanie, what is that broader thing that these groups are serving?
Change, transformation. I think that these groups come together for a purpose, but helping to elevate it to something that really connects into the broader mission of the company is really important. I know we're going to talk in a few minutes about WISE, but I can kind of share with you how that journey had that same transformation.
I love that you use the word connectedness and change and transformation. I think that's such a vital component of any ERG or WISE program within a company. But I want to talk about the why for just a moment. Why do executive sponsors matter?
I think executive sponsors matter because, number one, they can help bring visibility to the project, the initiative. They can provide a platform for communication. And communication is so important to elevate the great work and the celebration of what is happening inside of a program. Really, it's this connectedness that the executive sponsor brings. It's that particular lens of connectedness.
I think it's so true about visibility and really a platform for communication. In any company, especially large growing companies, there's a lot of noise out there. There's so many different things you could be spending your time and energy on within the professional setting, add in a work setting. And there's just a lot that you could be doing, and getting that executive sponsor and someone who is a senior leader and has the network that can help broaden what's happening and increase the exposure and reach is really important within an organization. So I'm glad that you brought that up. But I want to talk about the genesis of the Salesforce WISE program. Can you talk about how this program started?
Absolutely. So WISE is 5 years old. I know you guys have given a lot of coverage to this amazing program. The genesis of WISE was really a reflection of some of the leaders in my organization, let's say 5.5 years ago, about the lack of gender diversity in the job family as a whole, but also in leadership. And I know you're doing this podcast from Chicago, but it was a big Chicago meeting we were having at that moment, and kind of looking around the room and taking just kind of an assessment of where we are. And it reflected the industry. It was no different than what was going on in every software and technology company. But the beautiful thing about WISE is that it wasn't an awakening in me as a leader and creating a WISE group. It came from the leaders themselves. And they brought the passion to bring WISE to the table and looked for me to be an executive sponsor. So kind of that organic birth of WISE is really what's helped contribute to its success. But I've been a part of it since day one, and I'm so proud of what the WISE team has accomplished.
That's amazing. And you should be very proud of what you've accomplished. I saw the video of the Salesforce 5 years WISE, and it was unbelievable. I mean, it was so moving. And the amount of change and impact that the Salesforce WISE program has made in 5 years is incredible. So you should be very proud of the energy and effort that's happened there. But as you mentioned, that was a grounds up, and that doesn't happen overnight. When WISE was just getting started, what were those conversations like? How did you know this should be its own program, and how did you get started?
Great question. And I think too, at this time, Salesforce had not yet fully declared equality as one of our 4 company values. We were on the cusp of it. It was around the same time, but not yet fully defined. And so to look at a job family that had, like, we were in the teens as a percentage of gender balance within leadership, a little bit higher for the organization as a whole, and just knowing we could do better. Hearing the company and the industry, even I subscribe to a lot of great content from the National Center of Women in Technology, and they would set TAMs, or total addressable markets, for the number of women that we could potentially have in our org. And it was like in the 30s, I think, at that time. And that just really begged the question, if the whole population is 50%, basically, why do we set a TAM at 30%? And what can we really do to just blow that out? And so we started a ton of work inside of WISE to do that. I think a declaring moment was looking around and seeing, should we connect to another group? And there were 2 really strong groups that we considered. One was the Salesforce Women's Network. It's an amazing organization. But there was also the Salesforce Women in Technology, which was largely individuals in our tech and product organization. Again, a super powerful organization, but we felt our mission was a little bit different. Being in sales and also in technology just kind of created some additional opportunities for our job family. Just even take traveling, for example. I mean, how do you balance that? How do you have a young family or just manage any aspect of that when you're on the road all of the time? We just drew the line and created WISE. If you fast forward to today, we actually are a subgroup now of the Salesforce Women's Network, which is giving us more access and a communication platform to broadly share what we're doing. But now that we are over 800 strong, we're definitely not getting stirred into the broader pot. We're definitely a force of our own.
800 strong. That is amazing. Talk to me a little bit more about then being part of this larger group now and how that almost plays into executive sponsorship. To me, it seems like maybe a little bit more power in numbers to get the voice out there, but I don't want to make any assumptions.
Yeah, like the alliance with the Salesforce Women's Networks gives us more marketing range. It also gets us into more events, Dreamforce, for example, or other world tours that Salesforce might sponsor. The Salesforce Women's Network gets an angle in there. And then, we can be a part of that, or we can take some of that over in certain instances. It's really provided that for us. It's bi-directional because I'm really proud of the work our WISE team does. In fact, I told them a couple of weeks ago, I wish the WISE team could run a couple of my other task forces and things that I'm on, because they just get stuff done. And the Salesforce Women's Network has learned a lot from WISE about how to do that, how to set up all of these program teams and kind of get people running in their own swim lanes.
That is amazing, Stephanie. And I love to see all the success that you've had in your WISE program, because I do think it's inspirational to people. With the Pre-Sales Collective, we've started a WISE program. We've started a DEEI program, and we believe it's our responsibility to help those in the community who want to get started or don't necessarily know where to start. And it's been very rewarding. You talk about the total addressable market. I made a note here about 36% and why shouldn't it be 50? We've been doing some research with some partners, and today at the end of August into September of 2021, in North America, we have 84% male and 16% female. And there is so much that we have to do to get that to the equal playing field. Because like you said, what we've felt like is, well, if you look at the population and you look at gender diversity, it's closer to 50-50 in North America. So why can't this profession be there? So programs like WISE and all the work that you have done have really made an impact, and we've seen that impact. And that's why with Pre-Sales Collective, we want to continue to help those who want to make an impact in their companies, in their teams, because it does start small and will over time, we can look back 5 years from now and say, hey, there's dozens and dozens of companies who have WISE programs and thousands of members. And that's what we are really on a journey and a mission to do.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. And executive sponsorship can elevate that message. My oldest daughter is a sophomore in university, and her school sent out a communication piece that this freshman class is the most diverse class in school history. And I'm sure this was a completely innocent mistake, but the photo that went along with the article didn't reflect that diversity. And so I wrote back to the school and I was like, wow, what a missed opportunity to really share and celebrate the diversity that you're writing about. That's the kind of thing that an executive sponsor too can really help put a lens on. And it's a powerful platform.
Well, I love that example. And I actually really appreciate that you brought that to their attention, right? Because I think it's important because sometimes people, they're not aware to some of these things that actually matter in their messaging. And so it's good that we hold each other accountable. But you just brought up something that I really wanted to ask you about is the role of the executive sponsor and examples. For you in your day-to-day when it comes to the WISE program, what are you responsible for when it comes to being an executive sponsor of WISE?
I think there's a couple of buckets where an executive sponsor can richly influence a group. One is just in the early support of standing up a team, helping with the business case, helping the team, coaching them really to understand the value of the organization as a whole. But once the group is kind of up on their feet, I think it evolves into being like a spotter, helping them really make sure that what they're doing is balanced across the company priorities, but also going back to that original vision of the team itself, as well as removing obstacles. That spotter role, I think, is really important. I mentioned earlier networking, and I think the networking aspect is really powerful, just helping teams understand what this group is about, helping other teams understand how they can connect to it, how they can run in parallel alongside it to complement its good work. And then the last thing is coaching. One of the most powerful things we learned with WISE was how it could really be a platform to help develop our future leaders. And it comes about, again, in organic ways. People take on leadership responsibilities for these committees. They have big wins. They expand their personal network. So being a coach along the way is a really powerful part of executive sponsorship. It helps be a sounding board. It helps them secure resources. And the last thing about being a coach is you're there to help celebrate. And that's really a big role of executive sponsorship because most of these teams are someone's side gig, you know? Why do they do it? And there's a variety of reasons why people come forward to do this, but giving gratitude and celebrating those wins is an important part of sponsorship.
That is a great list and examples. But one of the things that you just said that really resonated with me is that this is part of the side gigs for many people, but it's also an opportunity to grow and learn. What that resonates with me is that I've encountered in my career individuals who wanted more responsibility or wanted a leadership role, but there may not have been a role in our team or in our org for them. So getting involved in programs like WISE allowed them to flex some of those leadership muscles that they weren't able to do in their day-to-day while also giving them the level of responsibility that they were looking for. So it sounds like you've had a lot of success in that. And in turn, it's developed employees, making them more well-rounded and prepared for that opportunity once it arrives.
100% agree. And in fact, you know, I think about a lot of mentoring or coaching conversations I have with individuals that want to grow and want that next opportunity. If you follow your internal compass and lead in things that you're drawn to, I just fully believe things are going to fall into place for you, that you are in the exact place you're supposed to be right now. And if it's leadership through a program like WISE, that's going to carry you to things that you're equally passionate about.
I really like that. When we had Shelly Archibald joining the Pre-Sales Collective WISE kickoff earlier this year, she talks a lot about making your own luck and putting yourself in a place where you're able to succeed in a given time and opportunities will open up and present themselves. So I love to hear you say that because I think it really resonates with me and makes so much sense. Stephanie, one of the things that we've been discussing as a WISE group is how much energy and effort go into running some of these programs and taking away from the day-to-day. One common theme that I've heard you say throughout is balancing the company priorities and making sure that these programs also fit into company values. Salesforce does this extremely well. I can't say that every company out there does this very well. So I'm curious on your perspective of, if I have my day-to-day, how much energy and effort should I be putting into these programs? And really, how do I balance managing a program, managing my day-to-day, and then a personal life on the side?
Yes, we are blessed at Salesforce. And I'm going to go through a couple of details here that are not confidential. There are definitely things that we've talked about as a company, but equality is one of our 4 corporate values. So WISE completely aligns with that. We also give our employees time away from their quote day job to volunteer. And our ERG groups and initiatives count as that volunteering time also. So by participating in a program like WISE, it's really a win-win. It's helping to drive the company's values, but it's also giving back. And the employees get credit for that time away. All of that's great, but I completely get it that not every company is in the same place that we are. And so if you're in an organization that this might be swimming upstream just a little bit to stand up a group like WISE or some other initiative, I think you just have to balance how much personal time you want to commit to it. How passionate are you? What would a change or an outcome of your group really mean to you in your own personal career? Because sometimes those investments are just worth it. My time with the Girl Scouts is volunteer time, and it's time outside of my day role, but it's worth it. It makes my heart full. It makes me feel like I'm contributing back to my community, and it's giving me a broader network. I'm meeting with so many community leaders in my local area that it's very powerful. I would continue to do it without hesitation.
So well said there. And I love that you talk about it just being worth it, making your heart full. That's why I think the Pre-Sales Collective exists in a lot of these programs, is we just believe in what we're doing and believe that the energy and effort will make a substantial impact on the community. And I do like that you talk about networking, because I'm a firm believer of getting out and talking to other people who don't look like you, who don't act like you, who have different jobs of you, because it opens up your perspective. And in my opinion, that's where innovation tends to happen, is when somebody's thinking about the same thing that you're approaching differently. How do you handle that? Or should you reconsider how you're handling that? And I think that's why Pre-Sales Collective WISE has been so impactful on the community, is because we have this amazing network that's leaning into each other and offering advice and giving suggestions. And it's really kind of the rising tide floats all boats. And that's what we love to see. You know, Stephanie, this has me thinking, if I'm trying to start a group and I'm one of these individuals who really wants to start a group, you've given us a roadmap on maybe where to go. How do I approach an executive sponsor and say, hey, this is what we're looking to do. This is why we're looking to do it. And we need your help. How would you approach that conversation?
I think that the executive sponsor that you look for, first of all, is probably around you in those moments. And I think that people shouldn't really get stuck on leveling as much as somebody that can really help them with that initial vision, with access to people throughout the company that can help empower where the group is headed. Also, people are not going to be put off by somebody coming to them with a new idea and an ask to help. So it may seem daunting to go do that, but as the receiver, as a potential executive sponsor for your initiative, I really feel grateful that you came to me, but also I want to feel the connection to what you're working on to say yes.
That's so important. It really is, Stephanie. And this has me thinking, I want to understand maybe one of your experiences. Is there a moment as an executive sponsor where you really felt like the team was maybe in a bind or at an inflection point and you offered some advice, or you and other executive sponsors offered some advice and really saw the impact of how powerful an executive sponsor can be on a program like WISE?
Well, I think, like, for example, at Salesforce, having WISE become a part of the Salesforce Women's Network was something that we had to work on. And that required understanding the broader goals of SWN and how we would fit into it as WISE, but also to make sure our voice wouldn't be muted in that process. I think that's a really great example. I'm thinking of another example. Inside of WISE, we have a program called Dream Pitch. And I don't know if you've covered this on any of your other podcasts, but it's an innovation contest, and teams come forward that are actually randomly put together to work on a business initiative. And we've run this the past 3 or 4 years. But in the first year, the team that won was just kind of waiting, like, wow, we won. When are you actioning our idea and making it happen? And I think that that was a really good thing as an executive sponsor to go back and understand, why do people participate in programs like this? What is the win that they're looking for? How can we kind of tee it up a little differently next year so they really understand like the constraints of how business initiative really gets actioned, but make them feel like their contribution was valuable, because it was so valuable. And what we've learned with Dream Pitch is all of the contest groups have a little bit of something that we eventually action. It just doesn't happen tomorrow.
That's a fantastic example. And it's really about that managing and setting expectations. So I appreciate you sharing that. Stephanie, this has been very insightful, and I'm very thankful to hear your perspective and hear your journey in supporting WISE and your journey at Salesforce. But I have one final question for you. You've mentioned the job family a lot. The roles that all kind of go into what we call pre-sales. You've been a career pre-sales professional. You've talked a lot about how this is an amazing profession. I am curious on your point of view around the pre-sales career and how this function will evolve over time. And just maybe a little bit of context is we at the Pre-Sales Collective believe that this role is more important than ever due to evolving buyer behaviors and how B2C companies are kind of bleeding into B2B. And the pre-sales professional has really become the center of a lot of organizations and the crux of collaboration. And so I'm curious, as someone who's been in this career and seen the evolution of this profession over time, where are we and where are we going?
Yeah. I 100% believe the pre-sales job family, they provide that foundation of trust in a sales cycle. There is no group trusted more during that phase than people in pre-sales. But I think we're on this evolution that will continue to drive specialization into our job family. We started so many years ago with SE, or whatever acronym your company might use. And we've evolved into solutions where we have multiple roles coming to the table, from the vision stage all the way through to the value stage. Again, though, just tying back to that representing trust. You can trust in the solutions that we're ideating on. You can trust in the architecture. You could trust that you can get your questions answered by this team. But I think specialization is going to continue to be the area of the most evolution.
Thank you so much for your time today. Thanks so much for your support of Pre-Sales Collective and programs like WISE. And really thankful to have you here today. And it was great meeting you. And thanks for being on the Pre-Sales Podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, James.
See you next time. All right, Pre-Sales Collective. Stephanie really provided a fantastic framework and really a guide on how executive sponsorship can be so impactful within a WISE program. I love that she started off by saying C1 to B1. It's extremely inspiring for her to go and get engaged in a personal time with the Girl Scouts of America and highlight this amazing role in this profession of tech and allow people to see themselves in those leadership roles. It's very important. I mean, there's so many studies out there about seeing is believing and being able to see yourself in the shoes, whether it's an executive or a mentor. It makes a world of impact on people. And when we talk about WISE program, it's amazing to see the success that Salesforce has had with their WISE. A ground up initiative. It did not come top down, and now is 5 years old, 800 plus members, and have made a substantial impact on the profession and on many people inside and outside of the profession. Why have a WISE program or an ERG? It's really that idea of connectedness and providing a networking and sponsorship and removing barriers to allow cultures of change and transformation and belonging. I mean, it's so important. Again, this is why we emphasize this with the Pre-Sales Collective. And when we talk about the executive sponsor, there's so many impactful things that an executive sponsor can do. They can provide visibility, a platform for communications and connections, knowing they can do more with the group, knowing that there's more people that want to get involved, and really getting an executive sponsor from the beginning is really important. They're there for that early support to stand up a team and give guidance. And their role is to be a squatter in balancing company priorities. Because again, this is a lot of times something that we do outside of our paid day to day. One of my favorite parts about this is coaching to develop future leaders, organic ways to get involved, get engaged, flex those leadership muscles, and really celebrating the success of the team and the individuals within it. So if you're stuck on where to go and where to start when it comes to executive sponsorship, take Stephanie's advice and just go out there and make the ask. Don't get stuck on leveling. Find someone who will empower the group and help drive change. I'm very thankful to have Stephanie on the Pre-Sales Podcast today. I'm so thankful that Pre-Sales Collective has amazing leaders and individuals involved in our Women in Solutions Excellence program, our Diversity, Equity, Equality, and Inclusion program. And so I challenge you to get involved and get engaged. Whether you're an individual or a group or a leader, we have resources and programming to help create this network and help create this ecosystem and support you, whether you are starting a program from the ground up or you want to move your program to the next level. That is what Pre-Sales Collective is here for. So please join our Slack community and join our Women in Solutions Excellence or our Diversity, Equity, Equality, and Inclusion program. All right, Pre-Sales Collective, I enjoyed today's episode. I hope you did too. As always, please do like and share this episode. If there's someone that you think that needs to hear this, please send it to them. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.